Welcome to the Senior View. We welcome back John Palmer and we welcome back Gail Clifford from the Historical Society. And tonight we're going to talk about the stories of the special monuments on the town common and other stories as well. Believe it or not, behind each monument there's a very special story, right?
That's correct.
That's
correct.
right. Now we're talking about way back in time, so let's listen. Okay, Gail, let's start with you.
Okay. The first monument I'm going to talk about is the one erected for the location of the first meeting house. It's in its probable location because when they actually established the position for the meeting house, it was near a walnut tree that had 2 marks on it. And of course, the walnut tree is long gone. Anyway, the monument that's there now is about 5 feet high. It's of pink granite, which came from the Norcross Quarry on Lumber Street. This is a photograph of the whole monument. There's a bronze plaque on it that was done by a man in Ashland named Porter, and it says, "Near this spot stood the first meeting house in Hopkinton, built 1724 and removed in 1830. The monument was erected by the First Congregational Church in 1911. Here is a close-up picture of the bronze plaque. This was put in position at the end of August, and the dedication was held at the Congregational Church across the street. And they would have held it on the common, except that the weather was very bad. So.
Very good.
So I get to talk about the most photographed monument, and that's the Doughboy statue. Everybody takes a picture of that. But that is to commemorate the soldiers in World War I, the Great War. In 1930, the town appropriated money and planned for this monument, and they wanted it a life-size monument. Well, the monument actually turns out to be 8 feet tall, and it's on a 5-foot-tall granite base, so it's imposing, and that's why it's probably so well photographed. On the monument is a bronze tablet that has 115 names of Hopkinton citizens who served, who were casualties in the Great War and killed. And it was dedicated the statue was dedicated on November 8th, 1931. I think that might have been Veterans Day. If we had, that was Veterans Day. And it was a large celebration. There was a parade, there was music, there were orators, there was a flag salute, they laid wreaths, they played taps, and then everybody went to the town hall for refreshments afterwards. At that time, the town hall had a floor for parties. What I found, and this is why this little project or this little event is interesting. I found out something about the Doughboy Monument I didn't know. It gets cleaned every year before the marathon by a fund that was set up by the Cumlin family, Cookie Cumlin's family. So, and this is the picture of the Doughboy.
Yes.
Yeah, that's a great picture. Doughboy is a World War I soldier. That's what they call them, Doughboys. To you.
Okay, the other veterans monuments, first we have this one, which is the 3-panel for World War II and the Korean conflict. And here is a close-up of the center panel, which lists the casualties in each of those two. Then in 1984, they added 2 panels. Oh, go back to this original photo. The two panels at the end for the Vietnam conflict in honor of the Vietnam veterans. And then there were two separate pillars that were added. I don't know what year these went in. Here's one, and the other one. And these honor the vets of many of the other conflicts that we've had, alphabetically from Afghanistan to Somalia.
Now I've got to speak on the Husk Trough. This is right now it's on the common, and it's a big. I call it a big flower pot, but it's a big. The Hopkinton Garden Society keeps up the plantings and that, and they're beautiful. But there's a story on this Husk Trough. And,
really?
Actually, these Husk Troughs were prior to the automobile. They served a wonderful purpose because horse-drawn carriages were the mode of transportation, and the horses needed sustenance. They needed to drink. Now, I'm thinking about a horse that might be coming up East Main Street, pulling a carriage, and it's got to be very thirsty.
Yes.
So this Husk Trough, and we have a great picture of it. This Husk Trough was located in the intersection of Hayden Row and Main Street, right in the front of the Common. And you can see the Husk Trough right there.
Yes.
And that's the one we're talking about. So at some point it moved to the middle school, the present middle school in the front yard, and then then came back to the Common as the planter. But it's traveled, but it's still there. Now, on this, and this is where this kind of gets interesting. On the Husk Trough, there's a bronze plaque, and it says, "Presented to the town of Hopkinton by our honored citizen J.B. Moore, 1891." On the other side, there is carved into the stone the words, "Blessed are the merciful." So I wanted to know who was J.B. Moore. It's not a name that I've come across other than it's on the plaque. So we took a look, and we found out that he was born in Ireland in 1834. He immigrated to the U.S. when he was age 2. He got to Hopkinton because he married into the Claflin family. He married Polly Claflin in 1862. So he'd be 28 years old at that point in time. They lived on Hayden Row Street. The house, I believe, is still there. It's number 74 today. They lived at Hayden Row, and his occupation, he was a wholesaler and a retailer in meats. We've seen old ads that say J.B. Moore Meats. We found out also that he had a slaughterhouse and store for his meat process on Hayden Row at the junction of Grove Street. I don't think there's any remnants of that at all, but that's what he did. But also, he was in Old Town reports. He was the superintendent for the town of streets, superintendent of streets, and I'm thinking that's why he was familiar with the streets, and that's why he decided to donate this granite Husk Trough. Prior to the 1890s, the troughs, they always had them, but they were wooden. But then in around 1890 or so, they became commonplace in granite. There's several in the area. And I think he was the one that
Isn't that
put it there.
interesting?
He was the one that put it
Yes.
there, and then at some point later on,
Yeah.
I think it was in 1908, the town honored him.
Superintendent
Yeah.
of Streets.
Superintendent of
What do
Streets.
you think his job was to do with
Well,
that title?
that's an interesting one. Gail and I have a mutual friend at the Historical Society, and he says, "Oh, you know what that job is? That's picking up the droppings from from the animals." But I don't know.
Okay.
Do you want more?
No, that's fine.
Anyways, so that's the original Husk Trough, and this is what it looks like now in front of the Common, and this is the reverse side, Blessed are the Merciful. So
Very good.
back to Gail.
Okay, I'm going to talk about the Calallen Fountain.
Okay, very
Yes.
interesting.
The fountain was a willed gift to the town by Charles Leslie Claflin, who died suddenly in 1905. And he wanted the fountain to be erected in honor of his parents, who were Charles Winslow Claflin and Anne Maria Valentine Claflin. And he wanted it placed so that it could be seen from their home, which is now always referred to as the Dockstetter House on Park Street, on the far side of the Common, south side of the Common. So Charles the Elder was in the coal business. He owned his own coal business, but he had interests in a lot of the other businesses that were set up all the way from Boston to Albany. So he was pretty wealthy for his time. And Charles, when he was old enough, he carried on the coal business. But he was also a trustee of the Hopkinton Savings Bank, and he was a selectman at some time too. So the original fountain, when it was erected, had 2 tiers above the basin. But the 1938 hurricane and some vandalism in the 1960s damaged it, and then it remained 1 tier for a long, long time. One person that was very, very interested in having the fountain restored was Paul Annunziata, who lived uptown, and he used to play in the water in the basin when he was a kid, so he loved that. Jeff Ferber at the time was on the Community Preservation Commission, and he invited Paul to come and speak with them about the possible restoration, getting back that other tier and making it so that it would work again, because the pipes were gone, the electricity was gone. So this took a long time because Paul died 6 years ago, and Jeff continued as long as he was on the CPC, and actually he was on the final committee that was set up during the 300th celebration in 2015. And they finally got the fountain restored and running, and it was dedicated in September of 2015. And this is what it looked like shortly thereafter.
Beautiful.
Gorgeous fountain.
So I've got another fountain, but it's the drinking fountain. And this has a little story too. This drinking fountain was, and it's called the Broudy water fountain. This drinking fountain is in memory of George E. Broudy. And George E. Broudy was the father of the former high school teacher, George Broudy. And this was very confusing because there's also a son, the teacher, whose name is George Broudy, and I understand younger George is George Broudy. So it took us a while to figure out who this, because the water fountain has on it in memory of George E. Broudy by his family, 1988. It's inscribed. So, but they were all George E. Brodys. But anyways, the high school teacher, George Broudy, we communicated with him, and he confirmed that it was in honor of his father. Now, his father, George Broudy, I'm going to call him George Broudy Sr. He was a prominent member of the Hopkinton Kiwanis Club, the Hopkinton Key Club, and he was an active citizen of Hopkinton, and he did a lot for the town. In 1988, Ernie Fecto, who was working on the gazebo project, he wanted to recognize Mr. Broudy's long-time devotion to the town, and that's how this monument came to be.
Very nice.
So it says 1988 on it, which is about the timing of the new gazebo, I believe.
Very good.
Okay.
Wonderful history.
Now I'm going to talk about one of the most wonderful citizens that Hopkinton ever had, Dr. Joe Annunziata, and his stone. And this is quite a story. Dr. Joe, as people remember, epitomized the country doctor style of medicine for over 35 years at his office, which was at 17 Main Street in the back. No appointments. You just showed up and you waited your turn, and he didn't mind bartering for the price of his appointments. He delivered over 500 Hopkinton babies at this time,
Unbelievable.
including 3 sets of twins.
Unbelievable.
He was also a school physician, and he was also a medical advisor down at Framingham Union Hospital, now known as Metro West. When he died in 1977, he left over 6,000 patients. The monument itself, which I'll show you a picture of here, is a very rough stone, and there is a bronze plaque in the center, which is a photograph of Dr. Joe. And carved in the bottom, it says, Joseph Annunziata, 1911 to 1977. Doctor, counselor, friend.
Oh,
And it was
very
dedicated in 1979 at Polyarts. Now, this George Broudy, who was the industrial arts teacher at the high school, sent me a wonderful story on how this monument came to be. And I'm not going to read everything in the article because it's long in the email, but it's just a fantastic way in which everyone came together to honor this man. The 2 teachers at the school, Mr. Broudy himself and Michael Name, who was art teacher at the time, their students, let's see, who else? Jimmy Pine was involved, the Callahan Cronin Funeral Home was involved, the water department, the highway department. Everyone was involved in getting this stone made, in getting the bronze plaque made. The students at the school made it. The art teacher is the one who designed it and drew and sculpted the actual profile of Dr. Joe. And I do want to read the second paragraph because this story is really funny. It's really amazing. Quote, "We had previously received permission from the Board of Selectmen to place the stone on the common, asking that they keep it a secret, and they did. Our plan was to set the stone, was to do it at night and have it completed by the next morning when people drove by. Around midnight one night, Jimmy Pine excavated a hole to accept the stone, and he filled it with pea stone to provide a foundation upon which to set the stone. And he also provided another piece of equipment to go to the high school and gingerly pick up the stone and bring it to the common. We even put planking down so that the weight of the equipment used wouldn't depress the grass and leave impressions. We placed the stone and leveled it, And then volunteers from Weston Nursery came and planted rhododendrons around the stone. They left at 4 in the morning, and when people drove by the next morning, it appeared the Dr. Joe's monument had grown overnight. Isn't that beautiful?
Yeah,
Just
it
wanted to
is
show that
beautiful.
again. That is just amazing.
Yeah, it's a nice story.
Thank you, George, for taking the time to write this.
yeah.
Yes.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
Oh, and since I haven't read the whole thing, anybody that's interested in reading it, this whole email will be in the museum at the Historical Society, and anybody
Wonderful.
can come down and read it.
Wonderful.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Wonderful.
That was a good one.
So much community,
Yeah.
you know, and
Yes.
loving
Yeah.
community.
So this next one is a very well known statue. It's the
Oh, yes.
the George Brown statue, but I didn't know a lot. I knew George Brown and the Brown family and his son Walter Brown. I knew of them, but I didn't realize George Brown was so much into sports until I was working on this presentation. But the name of this statue is the Starter. It's a bronze statue, and it's of George firing the pistol to start the marathon. This statue was commissioned by the Hopkinton Athletic Association. George Brown was born in Hopkinton. He's a Hopkintonian. He was born in 1880. He was a lifelong sports figure. And this is where I was kind of overwhelmed. He managed he managed the U.S. track and field team at 5 Olympic Games. And he was officiated at the 1932 Olympic Games in Los Angeles. So he was involved in 6 Olympic Games. I know from my college days, I used to go to hockey all the time. I loved college hockey. He was instrumental in college hockey, but he actually promoted college hockey and professional hockey, and he's been inducted into both the U.S. and the Canadian Ice Hockey Hall of Fames. So he was a big deal in hockey. He was been associated with the Boston Athletic Association for many, many years. And his association with the BAA is the reason why the starting line of the marathon came from Ashland to Hopkinton. He was the one that was instrumental in getting that starting line to
glad he
Hopkinton.
did.
Yeah, I mean, look at all that excitement Ashland would have and not us.
That's
but it was a big accomplishment. The statute reads, honoring George V. Brown, who stands ready to start the Boston Marathon as he did from 1905 to 1937. So he was 32 years involved with this. He died in 1937, and he's buried in St. John's Cemetery. So that's the George Brown story.
Very good. Well, we've got 2 minutes left, but I just want to thank you so much for coming and sharing this wonderful history. Just wonderful. And I hope you come back again. Okay? And,
Oh, yes.
oh, yes, because it's so important. And I think it's nice that many people who don't go down to the Common often take a walk through and look at the monuments and think of that monument and the history behind it, especially after listening to John and Gail. And so enjoy it, because it's all community. And in community, we're really just all one, aren't we?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Thank you for coming.
You're welcome.
Thank you
Thank
for
you for
coming.
having us.
And we thank you for watching. Enjoy your beautiful town of Hopkinton. Walk the Common. Have a good night.
Facing life's difficulties takes strength and determination. Whether it's physical challenges or struggles you can't see, it takes strength to ask for help when you need it. Learn how other veterans have reached out for help and hear their stories of strength and recovery at maketheconnection.net.
Do you find yourself feeling down in winter? Or if you experience depression through the year, does it get worse in the colder and darker months? I'm here to tell you about winter depression and what you can do that may be helpful. Seasonal affective disorder, or SAD, is a type of depression that tends to occur in the fall. You may lose your energy and motivation. You may feel sluggish, agitated, distracted, hopeless, and you may have problems with sleeping, your appetite, or suicidal thoughts. SAD can lead to social withdrawal, problems with school or work, and substance abuse. Here's the good news. You can talk with your primary care physician, your psychiatrist, or mental health professional. There are effective treatments such as counseling, lightbox therapy, or medication. Sometimes we feel bad in the fall and winter anyway, especially during the holidays. But if a mood slump continues for days or weeks, don't wait. Talk with your doctor or counselor for more information and support.